Did you hear my voice?
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 Mount Sac Voices. And this is Aaron G., your host today, and it's an honor to have Danielle and Pedro here. Both of them are alumni. Both of them also are members of El Centro. What's so wonderful about it is that they were here before El Centro. We have both of them that are first generational students. What's so beautiful is that their journey from before there was a club called El Centro, their struggle is enlightening. It's enlightening. I'm looking at them and it's just an honor to literally be interviewing them both at the same time because they're a motivation to me to become an alumni. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, I'm 60 years old, but I believe I can, I will, I must. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm kind of like my friend from Argentina. I interviewed him, and when my youngest left at 20, I said, it's my turn. So tell me, Danielle, tell us how it was when you began, when there was no El Centro, there was no support, and what encouraged you to come back to support others?
Good question. I started my journey here in September of 2017. And I remember my first year here, I wasn't involved in anything. And every year here, we have join a club. That's when every club and organization is out, where Kerr's Corner is at, in front of 9B. And I saw this club called Mecha, an organization called Mecha. And I remember seeing Pedro there. And I was like, wait, that's so cool. Like, why do I feel like I can see myself there? And as I got involved and I began to be a part of the community there, I saw that they were pushing for the opening and the establishment of El Centro here on campus. And I was like, wait, like, that's so amazing because we do not have a space for Chicanx or Latinx students here on campus. Because we have so many resources here at Mount Sac, but there wasn't a place for a student support program for Latinx students.
Pedro, tell us about your journey and how you were there for Danielle. You were an inspiration. You were a face that she could see before El Centro, but there was a almost like a pilot program. I'm not going to go biblical or nothing, but that was like the John the Baptist of El Centro, right? So tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so similarly to Danielle, I started Mount Sac in 2016, right after graduating high school. Graduating high school itself was a big mission for me. I was not the best student, right? I had very low grades, and I feel like I had just made it to graduation. On top of that, dealing with a lot of things at home, right, that made it very difficult. In 2016, again, as a reminder, was a big election period at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And me, being Mexican, Chicano, it affected me a lot, and I had a lot of energy, right, and a lot of political energy I wanted to channel out, right? And so coming into Mount Sac in that state, right, I knew I wanted to get involved with some political effort, right? And likewise to Danielle, I came across a table information booth for Mecha. And like Danielle, I saw someone who is now also a Mount Sac alum. His name's Alejandro. And he gave me the spiel about what Mecha is. And I was like, I'm down, like this is the organization I felt I wanted to put energy towards. And so I did, and I was at every single Mecha meeting, event, etc., to the point where later, where I met Danielle, I was involved in our campaign or our movement to advocate for the institutionalization of a cultural resource center and support program, but geared towards the addressing and supporting the specific educational and cultural needs for Latinx students on campus, right? So we started this movement in various ways, right? But there were two main issues that we were arguing, right? And that was that one, Mount SAC is a predominantly Hispanic institution or Latinx institution. We are a Hispanic serving institution or recipient of the Title V grant. However, the institution was not supporting Latinx students specifically, right? There wasn't a specific program or center for Latinx students. The other important issue was that Latinx have the lowest rates of degree attainment, right? And so that was another issue that we're arguing, and arguing for El Centro, right, to meet these issues, to address them and to resolve them, right? And so that was our framework that we were working towards.
That's beautiful you mentioned that, because if I heard Danielle right, you actually became a recipient of El Centro Latinx, and you as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that, Danielle.
Yeah, so later on with my work with Pedro and the other Mechistas, I became very empowered, and I became very aware of, it's actually really messed up that there isn't a space for us, because and every semester when we have our first Mecha meeting, we show the actual graph of the low degree attainment numbers of Hispanic or Latinx students. And the folks that come through, they're surprised. They're like, whoa, that's actually really, really low. Yes, we are the majority here, but those numbers look a lot different at a university. And so definitely through my work with Mecha, I became very aware of what what it is to be a student at a Hispanic serving institution, and realizing that a lot of schools, I went to UCR right after, that's a Hispanic serving institution. Mm-hmm. UC Santa Barbara is a Hispanic serving institution. I believe UCLA is as well, right?
It's about to be, yeah.
It's about to be, yeah. So we don't know these things. And these big universities and colleges like Mount SAC, they're a recipient of this grant.
Mm-hmm. Title V, is that it?
Mm-hmm. That's right. So that's a state grant that the state grants campuses who have a significant population of Hispanic students or Latinx students, right?
So if I hear correctly, I want to thank both of you all, because that's probably why we got new buildings around here, because those funds was redirected to service the communities that it says supposed to serve. So I am so proud of y'all, right? It's an honor to see a man and a woman who not only was there before they knew of the Title V, stay there in the struggle of, bring it to the awareness of the people who it need to be brought to, and we got new buildings.
And we've come such a long way for that. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Mechistas before me that have planted the seed for us to keep going on with this movement. I know Fabian Pavon and Alejandro are very, very prominent figures here at Mount SAC. A lot of people know them, but I believe they planted the seed and motivated us to continue advocating for this space, because it was really hard. While being a student here, I was also a student employee. I worked in various departments here. So while being a full-time student, I also took the time to be a part of Mecha and to organize. And then it took a lot for the students to really work on this, because it was definitely a challenge for sure. And going against the grain was definitely a struggle in itself, but it paid off. But it took years.
So we're going to stay with you, Danielle, and then we'll get to you, Pedro. Let's talk about stay on that same page you're at, but let's talk about how all that hard work paid off at an institution that you appreciate.
Yeah. So now it's, as an alum, I am so happy to see that there is a building being built for El Centro. It's really cool. I was just there a couple months ago inside the building to see that they're going to have a kitchen area. They're going to have a lounge area. And it's definitely very motivating to see it come to life. I will say that there is for sure things that we still need to push for, just to make sure that it's staying at the vision for the students. Because it's a program for the students and to help them and to motivate them to, I guess, like make it an easier process for them in college because it's hard. But I will say it's very, very rewarding to see that and to see the work that current staff and employees for El Centro are doing, like Pedro himself.
So, Pedro, you graduated from Mount Si.
Yes.
And you went on to UCLA.
Yes.
And you graduated from UCLA.
Yes, I did.
And you decided to come back to the home of the struggle to continue to give back. Tell us about that.
So yeah, I think as a machista, I think it's always kind of a plan of ours, right? That once we go through the education, once we attain that degree, right, we apply it to our community, right? And so whether it's on campus or in a local community or wherever a former machista or, a machista may find themselves, they'll be applying that knowledge, right? In a community-oriented manner. So yeah, I transferred from Mount SAC to UCLA, got a bachelor's in Chicanx and Central American Studies. After that, I worked in a couple different capacities, but to my knowledge, El Centro was shifting in some of their staff. And so in a sense, I was asked to come support El Centro, take on this position. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, like, I'd love to, right? It was something that was very, a passion of ours, right? And so now being a staff member for El Centro, it was kind of a little bit like not a culture shock, but it was just a different reality, and it's kind of a trip, right? That this center, this space, but also the physical classroom space area is now it's manifested, right? And so I'm able to now support students and help put on these programs and cultural events that generally support students culturally, but also educationally, right?
Thank you. And for those of us who don't know, machista,
yeah,
what does it mean?
So, being a machista is someone who is a part of Mecha.
And what is Mecha?
Mecha is a political and social organization. It stemmed from the 1960s during the Chicano movement, because they got inspired by the Black movement in the 60s. So definitely it was a movement to motivate Latinx folks into higher education.
So tell us about you two not only talking about graduating and the statistics, but furthering your education, and then again coming back to the community and actually making a difference. Danielle.
As an alum, I love coming back. because there is no other place like how I felt here in the community I felt at Mount Sac, especially in El Centro. My first year when I was a student here at Mount Sac, I wasn't doing too well. I was dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety because I felt very isolated and alone. But because of Mecha and the idea of El Centro, actually became very motivated to do well in school. And my grades were doing a lot better. And I actually felt like, you know what, it is possible for me to transfer to a university after this. Like, I could actually do it because there are others around me that are very supportive. And so, as an alum, even though I've already graduated, I still love coming back because I love seeing the students that are a part of El Centro and that are actually motivated and that are actually really happy.
So I am so happy you came back because I would have never met you, right? And thank you for the work you've done, the work you continue to do. Pedro, tell us about you graduating and then you furthering your education to be an example to both Danielle and I that we can go as far as we want, but don't forget where we came from. Tell us about that journey, because a few minutes ago you was like, when they asked me that I want the position, it was like, really? Right? Tell us about that joyful experience, that journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a lot, right? So I kind of mentioned that coming into Mount Sac, I felt like I wasn't very prepared. As first generation, low income students, you probably don't have the most preparation to begin your college career, right? Your career in higher education. It was a tough start. And I remember I actually came in as a film production major. So I took some classes around this building a lot, And so, but yeah, I was like kind of finding my way through Mount Sac, experiencing some different classes, took some film classes, took some photography classes, took the general ed classes, and at the same time, I'm like involved in Mecha, right? And through there, I'm learning a lot about history and literature and politics, right? And so it actually wasn't until our friend Danielle, she brought up Fabian, right? And so when he was actually a Mount Sac alum. He graduated from UC Santa Barbara and he came back to work at Mount Sac. And so he actually put on what we called a community class, right? A community Chicanic studies class. And so what that was is that he, through his position, I believe, was able to acquire a classroom or reserve a classroom space, right? It wasn't like students could like register for it. It wasn't a credit course. It wasn't like on the course catalog. It was just a class he wanted to put on for anyone who was interested in attending. And partially also because there was a lack of ethnic studies classes. And so I was attending these classes of his, which were just like kind of mini lectures, etc., right? And so that in a way was my first introduction to Chicanic studies, ethnic studies. And so with that and with my involvement in Mecha, I was like, this is something I want to commit to, right? This is something I really like. It's education, it's politics, it's my history, it's my community, right? This is what I want to put my energy and my political energy, but also my academic energy into, right? It's what I want to pursue. And so that was a big period for me. So I changed my major to Chicanic studies, or technically sociology, but on the track to later transfer into Chicanic studies major at a 4-year university. But of course, it wasn't like the light bulb went off, right? And I was suddenly like a super scholar studious student, right? it was still challenging. I failed a couple classes. I dropped out from a couple classes. There was one semester when at home, the situation exacerbated, and it was a lot on my mental health. And so I had to drop my classes for that semester to kind of I just couldn't participate in class in that
It was
state,
called,
right?
it's called self-care, but
Self-care.
I remember me having to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So let's get to, after you had those challenges at home, dropping classes, maybe some doubt. Danielle mentioned, in the beginning of her journey, there was a little bit of depression, not feeling a part of, but this mecha, this ideal of working for the community, working to better self, and reaching the goal to graduate, right? As I'm listening to both of y'all, it's motivating to hear along your journey was similar along my journey. They always inspire us. Listen, don't stop. Because if we stop, then we practicing starting and not finishing. But the joy of, I'm looking at you two wonderful people, but y'all talking about finishing and then come back. Don't forget where you came from. So that's improving the community more. It's bringing a light. When I walked into El Centro just a few minutes ago, right, the first light was Danielle, right?
Yeah.
Right? It was just a light right in front of me. I didn't move nowhere else. I stood right there, and then I began the conversation. And then Soul said, "That's Pedro." I was like, "That's the one." And I already knew you was going to give me a tomorrow episode, right? Because you shy, you reserved, and you a servant, right? And so I said, okay. He don't know he's going to be leaving with Danielle, but let's check your schedule. But let's get back to, after having those setbacks, the motivation that propelled you to finish here, prepare to transfer, finish there, and then before you know it, you got that call or that email. "Hey, Pedro, you want to come over here and work?" What? Tell us about that journey.
Okay. Let's see, where do I start? So I guess when I transferred, it was in 2020. So that was during lockdowns, right? So during my last semester at Mount Sac, I was like, cool, like this is my last the final run, right? And then lockdowns hit because of the pandemic. And so that was very challenging, right? I actually almost did not transfer, right? Because of the big changes of lockdowns, and just adjusting to that was very challenging, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And I think it should be known, or maybe expressed more or shared more, that like, yes, I transferred, eventually graduated, but it was never like as easy, so for me, I failed a class. It was a biology class that semester, but luckily I was like almost at the minimum units or credits required to transfer, right? And so I had to reach out to my mentors and like my counselors, right? The folks around me, my support network, my support system, to try to gain some information about like what I should do next, right? Reaching out for help. And so through a couple friends and through a couple counselors who I had a relationship with, or like a strong rapport with, they were like, you can still transfer on what's called like partial IGETC, right? Meaning that I just need the minimum units, credits required to transfer, and I can complete that required I get to class at a later point. I just need to finish those credits units. And so in that following summer, I took a couple classes on to just meet those requirements, right? And I bet you can like imagine that you get into these schools that you want to go to, and you're like, crap, I failed this class, that I need it. And it was a pretty scary moment, but luckily through my support system, I was able to gain that help, that information. And that's what I eventually did. Biology, STEM classes are usually more challenging for me. But I was able to complete the units, and later the next summer I took classes, a Mount SAC class in biology, coupled with like a lab course or something. And I was able to complete that as well, right? So that was one of the big requirements for me to actually even graduate, right? At the UC level, it was challenging. Pandemic still kind of going on. There's like online courses, in-person courses, kind of going half and half, right? And navigating the big university as a first-gen, low-income transfer student, again, is a big challenge in of itself. And on top of that, with the pandemic, right? And so, I heard this somewhere in a program I participated in called Center for Community College Partnerships at UCLA, and I believe it was one of their scholars, they mentioned something that like, don't be afraid that at UCLA or whatever for your university you're at, don't be afraid that it's going to be harder than it was at your community college, right? It's going to be challenging, but going through the community college was the hard part, right? Because that's where you're coming in without really much knowledge about college in general, right? That was where you learned to connect with services and resources and build your community and your support system, right? So you already have all of those skills. Transferring and going through the four-year university is going to be challenging, but now you're equipped with all these skills, right? You know how to build your community. You have leadership skills. You know where to find resources and services to support your education, right? And to graduate. So I feel like I had that experience, right? It was very challenging, but because of my experience at Mount SAC, I was able to really look for support and, support myself. I was very supported in completing my education there.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Tell me about your experience, and have you decided to go after a BA or a master's? Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I graduated here from Mount SAC in 2021, I transferred to UCR, the University of California, Riverside. Same as what Pedro mentioned, because of my organizing with Mecha, I decided to get my bachelor's in Chicano studies, as well as my bachelor's in education. And I will also agree with him in how Mecha also prepared me, and Mount SAC itself had an amazing advisor here, as well as my peers, on how to prepare me to further my education journey at a UC, because at a UC it was different. I will say I had the privilege at UCR where I didn't feel like I was alone, because it is also a Hispanic serving institution. So my classrooms were very, I saw a lot of women like myself in there. And But I will say the one thing that I did realize is how important it is to have a cultural center and places such as El Centro at universities, because I did feel a little isolated because of that. I was looking for a space like El Centro, Mount Sacs El Centro at UCR, but I couldn't find that. But it, like, let's say I graduated from high school and went straight to a university, I know I would have not made it. I would have been a fish out of water. So I am happy that Mount Sac and El Centro and my peers really helped me, because I spent 3 years here at Mount Sac. And I needed that time to really mature and to really grasp and how to be a student, really, because in my high school career, I didn't know how to study well. Like, I did not have good study skills or habits. Here I had to develop, and here I learned how to write well and everything like that. So when I went to UC, there I was like, okay, it's hard, but Mount Sac kind of helped me with that adjustment. Even though universities, it's really different, and at times I did feel like a fish out of water. I will say that, but I'm very, very grateful for El Centro, and that's why it's needed. Like, that's why we fought for a space like that, because it genuinely does help students, and because it helped me.
So, I'm going to go ahead and laugh and get y'all to laugh with me. Do you know both of y'all said high school was a career, like it was a job to get out of high school, right?
Right.
And I think both of y'all for bringing that inspiring energy. Thank y'all for reminding us, though, that sometimes we're going to be de-energized. So when I hear, and I have had the experience of being de-energized, let me break it down. Both of y'all said it real clearly. I might get depressed. I might, don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm appreciated. Don't feel like I fit in, right? But something happens. Just while I'm going through that, a Pedro is sticking out. A Danielle is sticking out. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over there. And it was one of the best choices we made. We went over there. And some of our ideals were in line with the ideals they had. Community. That solved me being alone, right? Feeling accepted. They was always giving me something to do, right? So that solved that one, right? Being appreciated. Wow, that was a big one. And then I like being able to look back and see that I was evolving. I like to say the English language is backwards. Sometimes you have to read it backwards, and because they have vowels, you got to put the silent letter there, right? Because for me, to be loved, if I want to know an example of me loving me, I always monitor me evolving. And what I want to say is, y'all heard it first here on Mount Sac Voices. That was Danielle and Pedro, both alumni, and they came back to share a little with us. Pedro is also an employee here. Did you hear my voice?
Yes, I heard your voice.
Did you hear my voice?
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 Mount Sac Voices.